I grew up in that Roman Catholic home as a child, knowing only the catechism, knowing only the teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. And because I loved the Lord, and because I wanted to do something for Him, I wanted to give Him my life, I didn't know of any other way for a Roman Catholic girl to give her life to God other than entering a convent. I'm through going to the confessional box where, naturally, I'm under the influence of my father, confessor, the Roman Catholic Priest, his influence over my life. One day I made up my mind, through his influence and one of my teachers in the parochial school, that I wanted to be a little sister. At that time I thought of being a sister of the open order. But as I went on into this, up until the time I took my white veil, 16 and a half years of age, everything was beautiful. I really didn't have any fear in my heart whatsoever. Everything was taught to me was seemingly along the line that I had been taught in the church before I entered a convent. And so one day, after making up my mind to enter a convent, I remember that particular day, two of the sisters came home with me from school. They were my teachers. And when we arrived at my father's home that afternoon, our father confessor was in the home likewise. I often say when I was a little girl, children were seen and not heard. You didn't talk when you was a child, at least you didn't in my family, in my home, unless you were spoken to. And I remember I listened to them carry on a conversation, and then I moved over close enough to my father to ask him if I could say something. And that was a bit out of the ordinary, and he permitted me to talk, and I said, "Dad, I want to go into a convent." And I'll tell you, that priest took it up quickly. They had already been influencing me. My father broke down and began to cry, not because he's sad, but he's very happy. My mother came over and took me in her arms, and she too wept tears. She was very happy. Those were not tears of sadness, because I think her little girl was giving her life to the convent to pray for lost humanity. And naturally my family were very thrilled about it, and I was too. But anyway, I didn't go for about a year after that, and then the time come when I got myself ready, and my mother prepared things for me, and so I entered the convent. They took me, and we didn't have a place close enough to my father and mother's home, so I think they took me around 1,000 miles away from home, where I entered a convent boarding school. I liked about 3 months being 13 years of age, just a little girl. I look back on it now and think, my, homesick, I was so homesick. Why, my mother and daddy, they stayed 3 days with me, and when they left, I became so homesick naturally. Why shouldn't I? Just a baby away from home. And when I was a little girl, you know, I had never spent a night away from my mother, and I surely had never gone any place without my family. And naturally, there was a close tie in our family, and I was very lonely and very homesick. But I'll never forget after Dad and Mother told me goodbye, and I knew they were traveling a long distance away from me, and I had never realized in my heart I'll never see them again. Naturally, I hadn't planned it like that because I planned to be a sister of the open order. But if you listen carefully to this portion of the testimony, then you'll understand just why I'm saying some of the things that I say. Now, oftentimes we say the priest selects his material through the confessional box. Because at 7 years of age, I went to confessional. 7 years of age, I would always, when I come into the church, first I'd slip over at the feet of the crucifix, rather the Virgin Mary, and then over at the feet of the crucifix, and I'd ask the Virgin Mary to help me make a good confession. Because I was a child and my heart was honest, and I knew the priest had taught us to always make a good confession, keep nothing back, tell everything if I expected absolution from any sin that I might have committed. And so I would ask the Virgin Mary to help me make a good confession. I would ask Jesus to help me make a good confession. And you know, I'll assure you, after I lived in the convent for a short period of time, now I had to go on with my schooling. I just finished the 8th grade, and they promised me to give me a high school education, some college education. But I didn't get much college. I got mostly just high school training, and they gave that to me all right. I took it under some terrible difficulties and strains and all of that. It was rather difficult, but they gave it to me, for which I appreciate very, very much. But I'll assure you, after they put me through the crucial training that we must go through to become just a little novitiate entering a convent, the training is really, it's outstanding as far as the nun is concerned, and you know what it's all about after you've been in there for a little while. So now I've entered the convent, and for just a few minutes we want to tell you just a little bit how we live, what we eat, how we sleep. If I take you into the convent and tell you those things, you'll understand a little bit more about my testimony. First, as I entered the convent as this small child, I went on to school. but I was being trained. But the day came, possibly I was 14 and a half, when the Mother Superior began telling me about the white veil. And I didn't know too much about it, but taking the white veil, they told me that I would become the spouse or the bride of Jesus Christ. There would be a ceremony, and I would be dressed in a wedding garment. And on this particular morning, they told me at 9 o'clock, they would dress me up in a wedding garment. Now, you're wondering where that come from and how they get the wedding clothes for the little nuns? The Mother Superior sits down and writes a letter to my father and tells him how much money she wants. And then whatever she asks, my father sends it, and the little buying sister, goes out and buys the material, and the wedding gown is made by the nuns of the cloister. I'm still open order now. And not that they wouldn't use maybe a third of that for the wedding garment, but they would keep the rest of it. My father would never know the difference, neither did I, until I lived in the convent for a period of time, and I had to make some of the wedding clothes, and then I knew the value of them and what they cost, and I knew of the money that came in because I was one of the older nuns. Well, all right, the time came, of course, when I walked down that aisle and I was dressed in a wedding garment. Now, you know, in the convent, I used to walk the 14 stations of the cross, the 14 steps that Jesus carried across the Calvary. But after I had made up my mind to take the white veil, never again did I walk. I wanted to be worthy. I wanted to be holy enough to become the spouse or the bride of Jesus Christ. And so I would get out on my knees and crawl the 14 stations, quite a distance. But I crawled them every Friday morning. I felt it would make me holy. I felt it would draw me closer to God. It would make me worthy of the step that I was going to take, and that's what I wanted more than anything in the world. I would like to impress on your heart, every little girl that enters the convent that I know anything about, that child has a desire to live for God. That child has a desire to give her heart, mind, and soul to God. Now, many people make this remark, and we hear it from various types of folk who say only bad women go into convents. That isn't true. There are movie stars who go into convents. They've lived out in the world. No doubt they are sinners and all of that. But they go in when they're women. They know what they're doing. And they go in only because the Roman Catholic Church is going to receive not only thousands, but yea, it'll run up into the millions of dollars. And they don't mind who they take in if they can get a lot of money out of that individual. But the ordinary little girl that goes in as a child, she's just a child, and she goes in there with a heart and mind and soul just as clean as any child could be. I say that because sometimes we hear a lot of things that are really not true. Now, after we become the spouse of Jesus Christ, I want you to listen carefully to this, and then you can follow me into the rest of the testimony. We are now looked upon as married women. We are looked upon as married women. We are the spouse or the bride of Jesus Christ. Now, the priest teaches every little girl that will take the white veil, they'll become the bride of Christ. He teaches her to believe that her family will be saved. It doesn't make any difference how many banks they rob, how many stores they rob. It doesn't make any difference how they drink and smoke and carouse and live out in this sinful world and do all the things that sinners do. It doesn't make a bit of difference. Still, our family will be saved if we continue to live in the convent and give our lives to the convent or to the church. We can rest assured that every member of our immediate family will be saved. And you know, there are many little children that are influenced and enticed to go into convents because we realize it is a salvation for our families. And sometimes, even Roman Catholic families, the children grow up and leave the Roman Catholic Church and go out into the deepest of sin. And so every little girl that enters a convent is hoping by her sacrificing so much, home and loved ones, mother and daddy, everything that a child loves, her family will be saved regardless of what sins they commit. And of course we're children and our minds are immature and we don't know any better. And it's so easy to instill things like this into the hearts and minds of little children. And the priest is he's really good at it. And of course we look upon our priest, our father confessor, I looked upon him as God. He's the only God I knew anything about. And to me, he was infallible. I didn't think he could sin. I didn't think that he would lie. I didn't think that he ever made a mistake. I looked upon him as the holiest of holy because I didn't know a God, but I did know the Roman Catholic priest. And to me, I looked to him for everything that I asked of God, so to speak. I believed the priest could give it to me. And so the day comes when all of us. Now, as we're going in, I want you to listen carefully. After taking the white veil, things are beautiful. I'm 16 and a half years of age. Everyone's good to me. And I'm living in the convent, and I haven't seen anything yet because no little girl, we're not subject to a Roman Catholic priest until we're 21 years of age. And as we give you this next vow, then you'll understand that we don't know about this. This is kept from the little sisters until we've taken our black veil, and then it's too late. I don't carry the keys to those double doors, and there's no way for me to come out. The priest will tell all over the whole United States and other countries that sisters, or nuns rather, can walk out of convents when they want to. I spent 22 years there. I did everything there was to do to get out. I've carried tablespoons with me into the dungeons and tried to dig down into that dirt because there's no floors in those places, but I never yet found myself digging far enough to get out of a convent with a tablespoon, and that's about the only instrument. Because when we're using the spade, and we do have to do hard, heavy work, when we use a spade, we're being guarded, we're being watched by two older nuns, and they're going to report on us, and I'll assure you, you're not going to try to dig out with a spade, and you wouldn't get very far anyway, because they made those convents, or built those convents, so little nuns cannot escape. That was their purpose in building them as they build them. And there's no way for us to get out unless God makes a way, but I believe God's making a way for numbers of little girls after they come out of the convent. All right, now when the time comes, I think I was 18 when the mother began talking to me. Now, I planned to come out, see, after my white veil. I wanted to be a little nursing sister in the Roman Church. But the Mother Superior, I suppose she was watching my life. I suppose she realized I had much endurance, I had a strong body, and I believe the woman was watching me because one day she asked me to come into her office and she began to tell me, Charlotte, you have a strong body. And she said, I believe you have the possibilities of making a good nun, a cloister nun. I believe you're the type that would be willing to give up home, give up mother and daddy, give up everything you love out in the world, so to speak, and hide yourself away behind convent doors. Because I believe you're the kind who would hide back there and be willing to sacrifice and live in crucial poverty that you might pray for lost humanity. She said, I believe you're the kind to be willing to suffer, because we are taught to believe as nuns that as we suffer, our loved ones and your loved ones that are already in a priest's purgatory will be delivered from purgatory sooner because of our suffering. She knew I was willing to suffer. I didn't murmur. I didn't complain. She knew all of that, and she's watching my life, and that's the reason she began to tell me about the black veil. And then, of course, I didn't know too much about a cloistered nun. I didn't know their lives. I didn't know how they live. I didn't know what they'd done. But, this woman proceeded to tell me. Now, I hear a lot of people try to tell me in the various places that we travel and go. I hear a lot of Roman Catholics try to tell me I've been in so many cloisters. I know all about them. But a Roman Catholic can lie to you, and they don't have to go to confession and tell the priest about the lie that they told, because they're lying to protect their faith. They can tell any lie they want to protect their faith and never go to the confessional box and tell the priest about it. They can do more than that. They can steal up to $40, and they don't have to tell the priest about it. They don't have to say one word about it in the confessional box. They are taught that. Every Roman Catholic knows it, and every Roman Catholic, you'd be horrified to know how many of them steal up to that amount. And many of them lie. We've dealt with them. I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of them. I've seen a good many of them fall into the altar and cry out to God to save them. And before they're saved, they look into my face and hold my hand and lie to me. But after God gets a hold of their heart, then they want to make right what they've told me, because they realize they've lied about it. But as long as they're Roman Catholics, they're permitted to lie, and it's the saddest thing. And you can't expect them to know God, because God does not condone sin. I don't care who you are, but I don't believe God condones sin, and I don't believe He's going to condone it in the Roman Catholic people, even though they're being misled and they're being blinded and led in the ways that's going to lead them into a devil's hell. I believe that with all of my heart, because I've lived in a convent and know something about how those people live and what they do. Now the day comes. She told me, Charlotte, you'll have to be willing to spill your blood, as Jesus shed his upon Calvary. She said you'll have to be willing to do penance, heavy penance. She said you'll have to be willing to live in crucial poverty. Now already I'm living in a bit of poverty, but I thought that was going to make me holier and draw me closer to God, and it would make me a better nun, and so I'm willing to live in that poverty. And then on this particular morning, she told me what I would be wearing. She said you'll spend 9 hours in a casket, and she explained a number of things to me. That's the most I knew about it, and I didn't find that out until I'd taken my white veil. And so on this particular morning, I'm 21 years of age, but 60 days previous to my being 21 years of age, I'm going to sign some papers that they placed in front of me, and those papers are this. I'm going to sign away every bit of inheritance that I might have received from my family after their death. Of course, I signed that over to the Roman Catholic Church. And oftentimes, I say the Roman Catholic priests are enticing girls, not only their background, not only their strong bodies, their strong minds and strong wills, but he's enticing girls where mothers and fathers have much property, and they are comfortably fixed to the material things of this life. Why? Because when that child enters the convent, they're going to get a portion of her money, of her father's money. And I often say even salvation in the Roman Catholic Church is going to cost you plenty of money, more than you know anything about. And so they don't mind commercializing off of that child and the inheritance that would have come to her. And so on this particular morning, I told the Mother Spirit, give me a little while to think it over. She didn't make me do it. No one did. But I thought it over for a couple of years. And then one day I told her, I think I'm going to hide away behind the convent doors because I believed I could give more time to God. I could pray more. I maybe would be in a position where I could inflict more pain upon my body, because we are taught to believe that God smiles down out of heaven as we do penance, whatever the suffering might be. And I didn't know any better, because I often say, if you could only look into the hearts of little nuns, if you are a Christian, you would immediately cry out before God in behalf of those little girls, because to me we are heathens. It doesn't make any difference the amount of education we may have. We are still heathens. We know nothing about this lovely Christ, nothing about the plan of salvation, and we're living as hermits in the convent. And so on this particular morning, I come walking down an aisle again. I'll say a minute to that. And may I say, the morning before, I can't go into it too deep because I never would be able to cover enough of it so you could understand it. But this morning, I'm walking down that aisle, but I don't have a wedding garment on. I have a funeral shroud. It's made of dark red velvet, and it's way down to the floor. And I'm walking down that aisle. Now, I know what I'm going to do. The casket is all ready made by the nuns of the cloister, very rough boards, and it's sitting right out here. And I know when I come down there that I'll step in that casket and lay my body down, and I'm going to spend 9 hours in there. And 2 little nuns will come and cover me up with a heavy black cloth we call a heavy drape mortel. And you know, it's so heavily incensed that I feel like I'll smother to death. And I have to stay there. Now I know when I come out of that casket, I'll never leave the convent again. I know I'll never see my mother and father again. I'll never go home again. I'll always live behind convent doors, and when I die, my body will be buried there. They told me that, so I knew it even before I done it. It's a great price to pay, and then to find out that convents are not religious orders as we were taught and as we were trained. It's quite a disappointment to a young girl that's given her life to God and willing to give up so much and sacrifice so much. I'll assure you it was a disappointment. And so after I spent those nights, you say, what'd you do while you lay in that casket? What do you think I did? I spilled every tear in my body. I remembered every lovely thing my mother done for me. I remembered her voice. I remembered the gathering around the table. I remembered the times when she would pray with us. I remember the things that she said to me. I remembered what a marvelous cook she was. Everything as a little girl growing up in that home, I remembered it, laying in that casket, knowing I'll never hear her voice again, I'll never see her face again, I'll never put my feet under her table again, enjoy her good cooking. I knew all that. And so maybe for 4 hours I spilled all the tears in my body because it was so hard. And I knew I'd get homesick. I knew I'd want to see her someday, but I gave it all up. What for? For the love of God. I thought I didn't know any better. And I'll assure you those were 9 long hours. And then I seemingly got a hold of myself, and I thought, dear Charlotte, now you're going to make the best Carmelite nun, because everything I've ever done, even that I'm out of the convent, I do give my best. I try to give everything that I have, in regardless what I might do. And so I did in the convent. I gave the best that I have. And I wanted to be the best nun that I could possibly be. And the Mother Superior knew that, and don't worry, the priest knew all about it too. Now I realize after I walk out of that casket or till I come out of it, they're going to take me like this. Over here and right back here is a room. We call it the Mother Superior's room. Now, I've never been in that particular room, so I don't know what she has in there. But you know, when I walk in there this time, the Mother Superior sits me down in a straight-back, hard-bottom chair. And immediately then I'm going to take 3 vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And you know, as I take those vows, she opens a little place in the lobe of my ear and takes out a portion of blood, because I must sign every vow in my own blood. And after that happens, then I'm going to take the vow of poverty. Now, when I sign that vow, I sign it thus, and I'm willing to live in crucial poverty the balance of my life as long as I live. And what that poverty is like, of course, we don't know. And then my next vow, I'm going to vow of chastity. And you know this vow, of course, you know what it means. I'm taught to believe that I'm married to Jesus Christ. I'm His bride. I'll always remain a virgin. I'll never legally marry again in this world, because I have become the spouse of the bride of Jesus Christ. After the bishop married me to Christ, he placed a ring on my finger, and that meant I'm sealed to Christ. I'm married to Him, and I accepted it because I didn't know any better. And now here I am, taking a vow that I would always remain a virgin because I'm the bride of Christ. And I want you to listen carefully. And then, of course, my last vow of obedience. Now, when we signed that vow, I'll assure you already, I know what obedience means. I'm living in a convent, and there they demand absolute obedience. You don't get by with anything, not even for 2 minutes. I mean, you don't get by with it. You have to realize what obedience means, and they demand it, and you learn to know it, and you're much wiser the more quickly you learn it, and you obey it, and you give them absolute obedience. All right, now, what does it mean to sign vows like this? Let me tell you this. It means more than you folk will ever know, because most people that I know anything about, they know very little about obedience. Oh, in a sense, yes, but you'll never know what a little nun knows about obedience. I'll assure you that one thing, unless you live in the convent. All right, that particular vow, when I signed it into my own blood, it done something to me, because after I've signed those vows, do you realize that I've signed away everything I have, my human rights? I have become a mechanical human being now. I can't sit down until they tell me to. I don't dare to get up until they tell me to. I can't lie down until they tell me to, and neither do I dare to get up. I cannot eat until they tell me to. And what I see, I don't see. What I hear, I don't hear. What I feel, I don't feel. I've become a mechanical human being, but you're not aware of that until you have signed all these vows. Then you realize, here I am, a mechanical human being, and of course I belong to Rome now. I'll assure you that right now. All right, we become, after this particular vows, we become forgotten women of the convent. In just a short while, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, immediately after I've taken those vows, then the Mother Superior is going to take away from me my name, and give me the name of a patron saint. And she teaches me to believe that whatever happens to me in the convent, I can pray to that patron saint, and she will intercede and get my prayers through to God, because I'm not holy enough to stand in the presence of God. It isn't wonder the dear little nuns can never get close enough to God. We've always been taught that we'll never be holy enough to stand in His presence, and we always have to go through somebody else in order to get a prayer through to God. And we believe it because we don't know any better. And so now all identification of who Charlotte was is going to be put away. It'll be taken away from me. And if you knew me and would come to the convent and call for my family name, they'd tell you there isn't such a person as that. I don't exist, even though I'm right there, because I'm writing under another name. Now the Mother Superior is going to cut every bit of hair off of my head, and when she cuts it with a scissors, she puts the clippers on it. And I mean, there's nothing left. I just don't have one speck of hair left on my head. And of course, if you could be a nun, you would understand the heavy headgear that we have to wear. It would be so cumbersome to have hair, and so cumbersome to take care of it. We don't have any ways of taking care of it in the convent. There are no combs in the convent, and so you can imagine how hard it would be for us to take care of a head of hair. It's not necessary that we have a comb after they finish with us. All right, now, this is my black veil. These are my perpetual vows, we'll call them. I'm there, and I'm going to stay there. Now, you know, up until this time, I received a letter once a month from my family, and I wrote a letter out of the convent once a month to my family, even though when I'd write that letter, I'd no doubt they marked out a lot of it, because when I would receive a letter from my family, there was so much of it blacked out until there was no sense to the letter, and oh, I'd weep over those black marks. I was wondering what my mother was trying to say to me. Don't worry, you'll never get to know what she wanted to say to you, because they have blacked it out. And so it would break your heart many, many times, and you're lonely anyway, because you have no friends in the convent. I'll assure you, even though there was 180 on my particular wing, not one of those nuns were my friend, and neither was I a friend to them, because we are not allowed to be friends in the convent. We are all policemen or detectives watching each other. That's so we'll tell. And the little nun that finds something to tell on the other nuns, she stands in good favor with the Mother Superior. And then the Mother teaches that nun to believe. When she stands in good favor with the Mother Superior, she's standing in good favor with God. And so that little nun, of course, will want that, and she'll tell a lot of things maybe that are not even true on the other little nun. All right, now after all of this has transpired and all of this has happened, everything I have is gone. I've sold my soul for a mess of theological pottage, because not only are we destroyed in our bodies, many of us in our minds, and many of us, if we die in the convent, we've lost our soul. And so it's a serious thing. And I truly covet your prayers for little nuns behind cloistered convent doors. They'll never hear this gospel. They'll never know the Christ that you folk know today. They'll never pray to Him as you people pray to Him. They'll never feel His blessings as you people feel them. And so put them on your heart and pray for them. They surely need much prayer. All right, now, as I walk into that room and all of this is transpiring, now bless your hearts, I don't know what's going to be in the next room. After this has transpired and I've taken the vows that I will always remain a virgin, I'll never legally marry in this world because I'm the spouse of Christ. And then after this, the Mother Superior leads me out into another room, or rather she opens the door, and I'm to be sent into that room. And when I walk out in that room, I see something I have never seen before. I see a Roman Catholic priest dressed in a holy habit, and he walks over to me and locks his arm in my arm, which he had never done in the first part of my convent life. I never had a priest to insult me in any way. I never had one of them to be even unkind to me in the first part of my convent experience. But here he is now, and of course I didn't understand what it was all about. And I didn't know what in the world the man really expected of me. And you know, I pulled from him because I felt highly insulted. And I pulled from him and I said, "Shame on you." And it made him very angry for a minute. And he said, immediately, the Mother Superior must have heard my voice because she came out immediately. And she said, "Oh," and they called me by my church name. She said, "After you've been in the convent a little while, you won't feel this way. The rest of us felt the same way you do. And you know, the priest's body is sanctified. And therefore, it is not a sin for us to give the priest our bodies." In other words, they teach every little nun this. As the Holy Ghost placed the germ in Mary's womb, and Jesus Christ was born, so the priest is the Holy Ghost, and therefore it isn't a sin for us to bear his children. And let me tell you, that's what they come to the convent for. No other purpose in all of this world do priests come into the convent but to rob those precious little girls of their virtue. And I'll assure you, we'll be telling you a little later in the testimony just what they really do after they come in under those particular deals. But may I say, now every bridge has been burned out from under me. There's no way back. I can't get out of the convent even though I pled. Oh, how I pled with that priest. Send for my father. I want to go home. I don't want to go any farther. Only to laugh in my face. And let me tell you, that's when you stand alone and you don't know who to turn to, and you're a victim of circumstances, and you live in the convent because there is no other way to get out of the convent. And I'll assure you, I stayed in the convent until God made a way for me to come out. And so after all of this, now my mail will stop. I'll never receive another bit of mail from my family. Never another letter. I belong to the Pope. I belong to Rome. And then after all of this, the Mother Superior, after taking these particular vows, and the priest has invited me to go to the bridal chamber. You say, did you go? No, definitely not. I didn't enter the convent to be a bad woman. It would have been much easier to stay out of the convent to be a bad woman. You wouldn't go into the convent and live in the poverty we live in and to suffer as we suffer to be a bad woman. No girl would do that. And it would have been much easier to stay out of the convent if I wanted to be a bad woman. But I went there to give my life and heart to such a God. And that was the only purpose I had in going there. And here this priest is. And of course I didn't go to the bridal chamber with him. I had a strong body then. One of us would have been wounded because I would have fought until the last drop of blood. And you know, it made them very, very angry, I'll assure you. But I didn't go to the bridal chamber with him. But now I'm going to have to go to penance the next morning. And of course this will be a heavier penance because of what I've done already. And when the Mother Superior says we're going to do penance the next morning, I'm going to be initiated as a Carmelite nun. And I remember when she walked me down into that particular place, it was a dark room. I remember I lived above on the first floor until my black veil. After the black veil, they take me one story under the ground. And I lived from there on until God delivered me under the ground. I didn't live in the top part of this buildings at all. But you know, as we walked into this room, it's dark and it's very cold. And when we walked in, we came from back there somewhere. We'd come walking toward the front. And I walked along beside the Mother Superior, and when I got near the front, I saw those little candles burning. Anywhere in the convent, you'll find the 7 candles burning. And when I came a little closer, I saw the candles, but I couldn't see anything else, and I wondered what's she going to do to me. That's the thing in our hearts, and we can't get away from it because we have fear. And when I come a little closer, I saw something lying on the board there. And you know, when I came real close, then I realized, here's a little nun lying on that board. I'll call it a cooling board because it was that. And just as long as her body, and there she was, and when I could see where the candles flickered down on her face, I realized that child is dead. And oh, I wanted so much to say, how did she die? Why is she here? How long do you keep her here? But you remember, I signed away every human right. And so I can't say one word, but I stood looking. Then the Mother Superior said, you stand vigil over this dead body for 1 hour. And at the end of the hour, a little bell is tapped, and another nun will come to relieve me. And may I say, I was advised every so many minutes, I have to walk out in the front of that little body and sprinkle holy water and ashes over the body and say, peace be unto you. And I did exactly what they told me to do. Oh, it was a terrible feeling. I'm not afraid of the dead. It's the live people we have to be very cautious about. And I wasn't afraid of that little dead nun, but oh, my heart ached for her. And, after the bell tapped and I realized my hour's gone, the nun who comes to relieve us comes back here somewhere. And of course, we walk on our tiptoes. No noise is made in the convent. And when they don't speak, they just touch you. And of course, my being down there with that little dead nun, and I was full of fear. When that girl laid a hand on my shoulder, I let out a scream, a horrible scream, from fear, just fear. And I didn't mean to do it. I didn't break that rule on purpose, but I was scared. And immediately, of course, I had to come before the Mother Superior. And that's when I first learned to know, one of the first times, about a dungeon. They didn't tell me there were dungeons in the convent. And she put me in such a dirty, dark place with no floor in it for 3 days and nights, and I didn't get any food and any water. And I'll assure you, I didn't scream anymore. I tried so hard not to break the rules of screaming, because there is a dungeon, and I know they'll put you in it. And let me tell you right now, it's not a nice place to be. After you've been in one of those places, you'll know what it feels like. All right now, I say this before I go any farther, that popery is a masterpiece of Satan. I said it's a masterpiece of Satan, with its lying wonders and its traditions and its deception. It's a terrible thing when you know about it. And so as I come down into this room, and she took me, let me look at this little girl, and that particular, if we call it a pinch, is over. Now, the very next morning, she said again to me, Charlotte, you're going to do penance. Not the next morning, it was 3 days after, because I spent 3 days and nights in the dungeon. The next, next morning, whichever it was, she said, you're going to do penance. She took me down into another room, not the same room. And when we come walking down this time, I could see that big piece of wood, but I didn't know what it was. And when I came a little closer, there was a cross. It was made of heavy timber. I might say it was maybe 8 or 10 feet high, very heavy. And that cross was sitting on an incline like that. And she had me walk over here at the base of the cross, and she said, now strip your clothes off. And I took my clothes off. And then she made me down to my waistline. Then she made me drape my body over the foot of that cross. And she pulled my hands underneath and bound them to my feet. And then, that's where I'm going to spill my blood. And she had not told me how, and neither could I ask how I would spill it. And she gave 2 little nuns that came with her a flagellation whip. It's, I might call it a bamboo pole. It's about this long. It's about that big around. And it has 6 straps on it about this long. And on the end of either of those straps is a cross piece of sharp metal. And those little nuns, either was given one of these whips. And they stood on either side of the cross. Now, at the same time, those girls began whipping my body. And I mean, when that metal hit my body, it would break the hide, of course. It would cut into the flesh, and I spilled blood, and it was running down to the floor. That's my flagellation whipping. That is where I spill my blood, as Jesus said he is upon Calvary. And of course I am human. It wounded. It hurt. It was very painful. After the whipping is over, they don't bathe my body. They put my clothing back up on my body, and I have to go the rest of the day. When the night comes and I stand in front of my cell there, after we have to stand there to undress with our backs to each other, and then when I went in, I couldn't sleep that night. I just wasn't a bit sleepy, because I couldn't take off all my clothes. They had dried in those wounds, and it was terrible. I didn't take them off for several nights. And I'll assure you, when I came before my food, I didn't want my cup of black coffee. In the morning, we got a cup of black coffee to serve at the tin cup, and we could have no milk or no sugar of any type in it. And we have 1 slice of bread. That's made by the nuns of the cloister. They weigh it. It weighs 4 ounces. That's all I get for breakfast. And then, of course, in the evening, I get a bowl of soup, and that's fresh vegetables cooked together. There's no seasoning in the soup whatsoever. And a half a slice of bread, and 3 times a week they give me a half a glass of skim milk. That consists of my food 365 days in the year. And I began losing weight very rapidly, I'll assure you, because I didn't have enough food to eat. I don't know the day that I went to bed without a hungry stomach. Sometimes it would be so hungry I couldn't sleep. The pain was gnawing. You can't hardly stand it. And you're only going to get that 1 slice of bread the next morning. That doesn't fill you up. And of course we have to work hard all day long. And I'll assure you, those little nuns, as I covet your prayers for them, they need your prayers in more ways than one, because you'll go to bed with a full stomach tonight. And you're very comfortable right now, but I'll assure you there's not one of them that's comfortable. They're hungry, and they're sick, and they're wounded, and they're hurt, and they're heartsick and homesick, and discouraged, and worst of all, seemingly they have no hope. No hope. You and I are looking forward to the day when we're going to see Jesus. They have no hope whatsoever. And I surely hope you don't forget to pray for them. All right, that was terrible, I'll assure you. And then in a few mornings after this, the Mother Superior's taking me back for another initiation. And when I go into the penance chamber this morning, we come from a place up here, and we're going to walk back along like that, clear to the back. And you know, it was quite a ways back there, and I went through part of it's a tunnel, and then I come out into a room, and I walk through that room, and when I get way back there, I see those candles burning, and I see something else. There's ropes hanging down from the ceiling, and oh, I'm so scared. I wonder what the ropes are for and what's she going to do. After these two penances, you began to have a lot of fear in your heart. And so I can't say anything, and I walk back there, and you know, I saw the ropes then real plain, what they're doing hanging down from that ceiling. Then she tells me, you were over there against the wall, about that close from the wall, and I have to stand sideways like this. And she asked me to put up both of my thumbs, and I did. And then she pulled one rope down, and there's a metal band fastened securely, and she fastens that around the joint of my thumb. Then the other one comes down and it fastens around this thumb. And there I'm standing like this, facing the wall. And then, you know, she comes over here to the end, and there's whatever you want to call it, she starts winding. And I start moving, and she's taking me right up in the air. And, you know, when she gets me so just my toes are on the floor, just on my tiptoes, she fastens it. And there I hang, and all the weight of my body is on my thumbs and on my toes. Not a word is said. No one speaks a word. And she walks out of that room and locks the door. If you know what it means for a key locking a door, and know that I'm strung up there like that, you'll never know unless you're a nun. And when that woman walked out, I didn't know how long I'll stay there. How long that woman will leave me there. And you know, they didn't come to give me food. They brought me no water. And I thought, is this it? Am I going to die back here just like this? And within a few hours, you can imagine, I'm still a human being. My muscles began to scream out with the pain. I was suffering. And that woman let me hang, and nobody come near. And what good would it do for me to cry? You can spill every tear in your body. Nobody will hear you. There's no one there to care how many tears you spill. And so I just hung there. And finally, I began to seemingly, I felt like I couldn't stand it. I'll surely die if they don't come and get me quickly. And I felt as if I was beginning to swell. I don't know how long went by, and she opened the door one morning, and she had something for me to eat. And the water was in a pan, and it was potatoes, and those potatoes were not good to eat. They were in a pan. And there's a shelf over there on the wall that she can adjust to the height of the nun. And, you know, she pulls it up. Now, I'm not against the wall. I'm about this far from it. But to get that food, she puts it there and said, this is your food. And she walks out. Now, how am I going to get it? She didn't let my hands down. But this is what you'll learn. And you'll struggle to get it. I'm hungry. I mean, I'm so thirsty, I feel like I'm going mad. And to get it, I discovered that this hand goes high and this one will come down a little bit. And that'll keep right on going higher. As I lean, I have to reach higher with this one. This one will automatically let down. And to get that water and that food, I mean, I had to get it like the dogs and cats. And I lapped as much of it as I could because I'm so thirsty. And get those potatoes, I tried as hard as I could because I'm hungry. I mean, I'm hungry. And I got as much of it as I could, naturally. But I was hungry. That's the way she fed me for a while, and then she released the bomb. All right, now they can make us do anything. Here we are, the Mother Superior, and I might be down in the laundry room washing. And I told you how we wash. And it's a cement floor. And doing the type of laundry we do, some of it's very heavy. The water slops out on the floor, and oh, it's such a mess. We walk in it. And you know, then here comes a Mother Superior. And to me, a Mother Superior, just as soon you turn loose a lion that's very hungry and let it come walking down that aisle as you see a Mother Superior in a convent. I was scared to death of her. Every time I saw that woman, somebody had to suffer. And we're afraid of her. She knows we're afraid of her because she's cruel. I've seen in her heart is callous. And here she comes. And you know, there we are washing. And I tell you, when she comes, and we know, you feel her presence before you ever see her. You know her footsteps. And you know, we'll wash a little harder. But when she gets down here where we are, she might address me. And she'll say, you come out here. And I'm out there like a flash because I'm scared. And then she'll say, prostrate yourself down there and lick so many crosses on that floor. That's a cement floor. And of course I have to prostrate my body and lick those crosses. And those are not little tiny crosses as far as I reach. I have to lick those crosses. And she watches my countenance. If I don't like it and she knows that I don't like it, then she might say 10. She might say 25. And you know, then the next morning she may walk back through there again, and because she saw something in my face that made her to know I didn't like what she wanted me to do, she may call me again. My tongue by this time is sore. It's bleeding, but I have to look the crosses on the floor again. And then they do the same way about compelling us to crawl. They'll compel you to crawl, and may I say, it could be up and down an aisle like this 10 times, and it'll not be a beautiful rug like this. It'll be on a floor that you'll know what you're crawling on. And you know, I'm crawling, and I have to crawl like this upright. And my knees. Don't they hurt? and I might make it 5 or 6 times, and then I might not have enough strength to go the other 3 or 4 times, and I'll faint. But she'll pour some cold water on me and tell me to crawl again. And may I say then, I'll try to finish it out, and maybe the next day she compels me to crawl again. By this time there's scabs on my knees. I mean, those knees are sore, but I must crawl again. This is the life of a little nun. We're doing penance. And then she teaches us to believe that God is looking down out of heaven. He's smiling his approval upon those little girls. And God is made happy through our suffering. And because we are heathens, we don't know any better. We've never read the Bible. We've never had any scripture. And so those little nuns are ignorant of the Word of God. You know, we are just raised under the tradition of the Roman Catholic Church. And we know nothing about this lovely gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we have to do these things. Then the Mother Superior might walk through the cell door. By the way, in our cells, there's nothing in there but the Virgin Mary, and that is, she's holding the baby Jesus, and there's the crucifix, and then we have a prayer board. And by the way, I'll assure you folks that you'll never want to kneel on our prayer board. We kneel on it every day if we are able to walk under our own power. It is a board about this height from the ground, and there are 2 leading up like this one, and this one is about that wide. I'm going to drop my knees down on it, and there's sharp wires coming up through that board, and then this one up here, I'll prostrate my arms on, there's going to be sharp wires. After all, I told you we were going to suffer. We were going to do penance, and this is a part of my suffering. And as I kneel on that prayer board, I'm praying for lost humanity, and I'm believing as I suffer that my grandmother will be released from a priest's purgatory sooner because of my suffering. And I'll kneel there longer sometimes. Oh, it's terrible, but we don't know any better, so we do that because that's all that little nun does know, and we believe it. And there we are, and we are locked in our cells. Every night the key is turned in those doors. We can't get up and come out of there. And then more than that, 7 minutes of 12. We go to bed at 9:30, the lights are out. 7 minutes of 12, there's 2 little nuns appointed to unlock every door. Every little nun again gets on her feet, dresses in full dress, goes into the inner chapel, and there we again pray 1 hour for lost humanity. We don't get very much sleep, that's why, and we don't have enough food, and we work hard, and we suffer much. That's why our bodies are so broken. That's why we seemingly don't have enough strength to carry on after we live there. But I'd like to say this to you as I go, before I go any farther. Now, I did those very things we are taught to believe, that as we spill our own blood, now we must do this. As I whip my body, if I torment it or torture it in any way that I spill blood, I'm taught to believe that I'll have 100 less days to spend in purgatory. Now, you know, we have no hope. Those little nuns don't look forward to anything. You may think they do, but we don't. Why? After you live in a convent 10 years, I began to realize the Virgin Mary is just a piece of metal. She's a statue. I began to realize St. Peter's just a statue. I began to realize that the statue of Jesus is just a piece of metal. In other words, we've come to the place to believe that our God is a dead God. And I'll assure you, after you live in a convent long enough, not at first, oh no, but after we've suffered enough, after we've seemingly fallen down at the feet of those statues and spilled our tears on them and have begged them to intercede and get a prayer through to God, and years go by and no prayer is answered, then we began to realize we have a dead God, and so on it goes. And so those precious little girls, we're taught to believe that as we whip our bodies, or burn our bodies, or torture our bodies, and spill blood, that we'll have 100 less days to spend in purgatory. We believe in a literal purgatory, and that literal purgatory is a fire, and it's going to burn, and we're going to feel the flames of fire. And you know, when I say nuns are forgotten women, just who do you folks think is going to say a prayer or go and pay the priest to have a high mass for a little nun that's in a convent? I wonder who's going to. Why? Because they'll not even be notified. When many of those little nuns die, there's no notification of them whatsoever. A parent won't even know when they're dead. So who's going to pray us out of purgatory, or rather buy us out of purgatory? No, we realize after we're in there for a period of time that there is no purgatory. And of course, you know there isn't, and I know there isn't. And there is no purgatory. The only purgatory the Roman Catholic people have is a priest's pocket, and they're filling his pockets with coins in order to pray for the dead. And may I say, there are thousands and thousands of Roman Catholics. In the month of November, may I say to you, in the United States, 2 years ago in the month of November, the Roman Catholic priest praying masses for the dead of the Roman Catholic people in this country in 1 month collected $22 million for masses said for dead Roman Catholics. That's just a little idea, a sample of what's going on in this country. And still there are thousands of mothers that will work their fingers to the bone to go over there and give the priest another $5 to say a mass for a loved one that's in a purgatory. because that mother believes there is a purgatory. In the convent, they have a painting of purgatory, and there's nothing in the room but just that painting. And you know, every Friday, we have to walk around that painting. And when we walk around it, I wish you could look at the little nuns' faces. What do I see? The painting, as you would walk around it, looks like it's a big, deep hole out there. And there are people down in there, and the flames of fire is lapping around the bodies of those people, and their hands are outstretched like this. And the mother will say to the little nun, you better go and put another penance on your body. Those people are begging to get out of that fire. And because we're heathens, we don't know any better. I might go someplace in the convent, and maybe I'll burn my body real bad. Maybe I'll torture it some way and spill some more blood, because as I suffer, I believe they're going to get out of that place where a priest puts them. And there are millions of people, so to speak, in purgatory that your priest have put there. And when he knows that it's the biggest fraud there is in the world, he knows there's not a bit of truth to it. And bless your heart, I often say you take purgatory mass away from the Roman Catholic Church, you're robber of 9/10 of a living. She'll starve to death if you would take it away from her. She commercializes not only off of the living, but off of the dead, and on it goes. All right. It doesn't bother a Mother Superior to take one of those dear little girls. And may I say, you know, when the priests come into the convent, they come as our father confessors. Once a month we go to confession. And we don't want to go, don't you worry. Many the time have got in the very back row. I didn't want to go in there. I know who's out there. One of them, I may not know the particular man, but I know he's a priest. And I know those priests. I certainly have seen them enough. I've lived there long enough. I certainly have had contact with every one of them, and I'll assure you this one thing. I don't trust one single one of those in the convent. Now, we're not telling you about every priest. I don't know all the priests. I'm just talking about the convent in my personal testimony of convent life. And you know, we know something about what's out in that room, and here we are. We know we're going to confession today. It may take all day long, and here he comes. And I have never seen a Roman Catholic priest come into the convent that I was in without intoxicating liquor under his belt. And I say a man or a woman, regardless of who you may be, when you get liquor under your belt, you're not a man, neither are you a woman. You become an animal and a beast. And so we have a beast sitting out there. There's a straight, back hard-bottom chair, no other furniture but the crucifix and the Virgin Mary. But here he is sitting on that chair right out there in the middle of that room. Now here a little girl has to walk out there alone, and she has to kneel down. Think of it. Why, bless your heart, I really sometimes, I'm saved now, I'm out of the convent, and I now look back at that Roman Catholic priest, and I often say, I'm sure he was a twin brother to the devil, because he's full of sin, he's full of vice, he's full of corruption. And we go out there and kneel down at his knees. Now, you're a lucky girl if you get away from that man without being destroyed. Why, he's drunk. He's a beast. He's not a man. Oh, he has a holy habit on. He's an ordained Roman Catholic priest. And so I'll assure you, we don't like to go to confession, but we must go once a month. And those little girls can't help themselves, and nobody comes out into that room with the priest and I until it's all over, and then we can come back, and the next one will have to come. And I'll assure you, we don't appreciate that day. And those little girls don't know any better. They don't know anything about the planets of him. They don't know that Jesus went to Calvary and died for them. They don't know that he shed his blood for them. Those little girls know nothing about it, because to me, as I repeat again, the Bible was a hidden book to every one of those little girls. And so now they can do things like this. Now, if a Roman Catholic priest comes into the convent, he may go to the Mother Superior and ask her to permit him to go into the cell where one of the nuns are. And you know that mother with her carnal mind and her carnal heart, and she's very hard and very carnal, and she is the mother many times of many illegitimate children. They belong to the priest. And you know, she'll take that priest and he's drinking. She knows it. They bring liquor in with them. Sometimes some of the nuns will drink with them, and the mother usually drinks with them. And it's really a terrible place. It is not a religious order. It does not live up to that name whatsoever. But here she brings that priest into one of our cells. Now, I wonder if you realize how serious it is. That Roman Catholic priest, he has liquor under his belt, we know that. But he has a big, strong body. He's had 3 square meals of food every day of his life. He can eat all the food that he wants. But you know, there's a little nun that may have a broken body, and she may not have very much strength. And what did he come into that cell for? For nothing other than to destroy that little nun. I often say I wish the government could walk into a convent just about the time one of those priests are let in a cell. The mother will turn a key in the lock, and you're locked in there with that priest. Now, we have no way to defend ourselves, And I often say I have had to nurse those little girls. I'm an RN. I got my nurse's training by going through the tunnel over to the hospital as I lived in an open order convent. But may I say, after that priest is taken out of there, if you could look upon the body of that little nun, she looks like something you've thrown out in a hog pen, and a half a dozen old fowls have just mauled that child's body. And this is convent life. I can understand why your priests are calling over the phone every day or two and screaming their heads off because I'm in this city giving this testimony. But may I say to you, I don't mind if they continue to scream. I don't mind what they do. I'm not one bit afraid of them. I'll continue to give this testimony. As long as God gives me strength, I'll be giving this testimony regardless of your priests or your bishops in this country. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. And I'm not afraid of anybody in all of this world. I'm a child of God. And I believe God won't let anybody put a hand on me until my work is finished. And then I often say, I don't care what you do to my body after I leave this body. I'm sure I don't mind. And so I will continue to give the testimony regardless of what your priests think about it. Because I think God saved me to pull the cover off of convent. I believe he saved me to uncloak those places that are riding under the cloak of religion. I believe that with all of my heart. I'll assure you I do. Now, if I refuse to give my body, you know we're just supposed to give our bodies voluntarily to those priests. Many times the nuns are overpowered. But if I refuse to give my body voluntarily to them, then you know he becomes very angry, and he goes immediately to the Mother Superior. Then when two carnal minds come together, they can invent things that you and we don't have enough evil in our heart to invent things like that. We don't have enough sin in our lives to even think up such terrible things. And when those two carnal minds come together, the next time, I want you to know they're all ready. Now, the Mother Superior might say to me in a day or two, we're going to do penance. Now, the penance that they'll inflict on me is something that the Mother Superior and the priest has invented, and it can be very, very cruel. They might take me down into one of the dirty dungeons, and there's no floors in those places. And you know, they have a place down there, there are rods about 3 feet long. They have a board down into cement, and at the top of it there's a ring about this big, sticking out of the ground. They have some leather straps fastened there. And when they take me down there, they put my foot, either foot through those rings, and then they strap my ankle securely. Now, I'm standing with my feet in those rings. All right, they're going out of there. They're going to leave me locked up in that place by myself. And it's a dirty place. Well, I might stand there for 2 or 3 hours if I have strength enough in my body. But what do you think's going to happen to me then? I can't stand any longer. Sometimes we faint. Sometimes we just become exhausted and we go down. But when I go down, it flips my ankles over like that. And I can't do anything about it. I don't have what it takes for me to get up. I may have to lie in that position for 2 or 3 days and no one will come near. They won't give me a bite of food. They won't bring me one drop of water. But I must stay there. And the next thing you feel is the bugs crawling over my body and the mice running over me. And I still have to stay there. I can understand why they don't want me to uncover. They don't want the world to know these things are going on. No priest in this country wants it. And if he doesn't want the world to know it, then they better be pretty careful that nobody ever gets out of a convent after they spent a few years back there. But may I say again to you, my God is greater than all the outside forces. My God can reach his hand over into those convents, this country, any other country, and make a way for a girl to come out, and he won't have to ask the bishop to help him. He won't have to ask the priest to help him. But God can make a way for us to come out. I'll assure you that. Well, on it goes. Then sometimes the priests come and they get angry at us because we refuse to stand with them voluntarily. And you know, after all, the nuns' bodies are broken after we're there a while. And many the time, to have him strike you in the mouth is a terrible thing. I've had my front teeth knocked out. I know what it's all about. And then we get you down on the floor and then kick you in the stomach. Many of those precious little girls have babies under their hearts. And it doesn't bother a priest to kick you in the stomach with a baby under your heart. He doesn't mind. The baby's going to be killed anyway because those babies are born in the convent. Why wouldn't babies be born when you run places like this under the cloak of religion? The world thinks it's religious orders. And there are babies born in there. And most of the babies are premature. Many of them are abnormal. Very, very seldom do we ever see a normal baby. You say, Sister Charlotte, do you dare to say that? I most definitely do dare to say this. And I intend to keep on saying it. Why? I've delivered those babies with these hands. And what I've seen with my eyes and I've done with my hands, I just challenge the whole world to say it isn't true. And the only way they can ever prove it isn't true, they'll have to open if they ever serve a summons on me and call me into court. I'll assure you this one thing. Convents are coming open. And then the world is going to know what convents really are. and they'll have to open them to vindicate my testimony, because I know what I'll do if they ever serve a summons on me. I've been before the highest laws we have in the United States. I know what I'm doing. I know what I can say, and I'm not one bit afraid to say it, because I have been a part of this. I've been connected with this system 22 years behind convent doors, and it is a terrible thing. After when that dear little nun, looking forward to that day when her precious baby will be born. Most of you, dear mothers, oh, you have everything ready. The beautiful nursery, all the baby's beautiful clothes are made. Everything is lovely. You're looking forward to that precious little immortal soul is going to be born into your home. And everything is ready. And oh, I wish you could see that little nun. She's not looking forward to that. There won't ever be a blanket around his body. They'll never bathe that baby's body. But he can only live 4 or 5 hours. And then the Mother Superior will take that baby and put her fingers in its nostril and cover its mouth and snuff its little life out. And why did they build the lime pits in the convent? What is the reason for building it if it isn't to kill the babies? And that baby will be taken into the lime pit and chemical lime is put over its body, and that's the end of babies. Oh, when I think about it. That's why I try to challenge people, pray. If you know how to pray, you know how to contact God, pray and ask God to deliver the girls from behind convent doors. In other words, pray that God will make a way for every convent in the United States to be opened and let the government go in. And when the government goes in, you won't have to worry. The convents will be opened, the nuns will be taken out, and they'll be closed up. Just as they opened the convents in Old Mexico in 1934, there are no convents in Old Mexico. Every cluster it is opened, and they found all of the corruption back there, the lime pit. If any of you are taking a vacation, go into Old Mexico. The government owns them, they're public museums. And go through the convent, look with your own eyes, touch with your own hands, and then come home and see if you believe my testimony. It'll say every day red blood in your veins. I mean, it'll do something to you that nothing else has ever been able to do. Go through them and look at them. Go into the dungeons. Go into the tunnels. Go through the lime pit. Look at the skulls, rooms of skulls over there, and then ask the guides where they come from. And go and see all of the devices of torture they placed upon the bodies of the little nuns. Go into their cells and look at their beds and see for yourself. Oh, yes, you can go. It'll cost you 25 cents to go through each one of them. You look at those things and see them for yourself, and then come home, and maybe it'll give you a greater burden to pray for little girls that have been enticed behind convent doors by the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. Wonder how you would feel if this was your child. And remember, I have a mother and daddy, or had one, and they love me just as much as you love your children. And when they let me go into the convent, I'm sure my mother and daddy didn't expect these things to happen because they didn't know. They never dreamed a convent was like this. But, you know, I wonder how you'd feel if you could walk in someday and out there in this particular room. That floor is built for this purpose. There's a partition right out there. There's just a little thing they can touch. It automatically opens. And, you know, there's a deep hole underneath that floor. And this little nun has done something. I can't tell you what she's done, because I wasn't there when she done it. But she's done something, and to them it's very serious. And when they bring her to this particular place. Her little hands and feet are going to be bound securely. They're going to drop her in that horrible, horrible pit. And then they're going to put the boards back down. No one will ever know. Oh, there's plenty of chemical lying down there.